A cold CEO faints at the clinic, wakes up. The nurse who saved him is the same girl he fired years. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. A cold CEO faints at the clinic, wakes up. The nurse who saved him is the same girl he fired years ago. Let's see what happens when fate leads to an unexpected reunion. As Emma stepped back, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline, she watched Liam Parker, the cold and powerful CEO, slowly regain his composure. His eyes, which had initially been clouded with confusion, began to clear. He looked around the sterile white room, his gaze briefly landing on the medical equipment and the nurse standing at the door. His mind was likely racing, piecing together the fragmented moments of the last few minutes. She couldn't help but wonder if he even recognized her, if the memory of the girl he had fired so many years ago still lingered in his mind. As the nurse adjusted his IV, Emma quietly stepped to the side. She could feel the weight of the past bearing down on her. The years she had spent trying to forget the humiliation, the rejection, and the complete lack of explanation for her termination, all of it came flooding back. She hadn't expected to see him again, certainly not like this. "Thank you," Liam said, his voice still weak but tinged with sincerity. Emma only nodded, her throat tight. She didn't trust herself to speak. "You saved my life." He tried to sit up, but she gently stopped him. "You need to rest," she said, her voice firm but kind. He frowned slightly but didn't argue. He seemed exhausted, drained not just from the collapse, but from the realization that someone he had once wronged had been the one to pull him back from the brink. Emma stood still, unsure of what to do next. Was this the moment when he would remember who she was? Would he apologize? Would he acknowledge the years of struggle she had endured because of his decision? But all Liam did was look at her again, his brow furrowing in concentration. He seemed lost in thought, perhaps trying to place her face. "I don't suppose you're going to tell me your name," he said, the corner of his mouth curling up into a small, exhausted smile. Emma's heart raced. "Emma," she said quietly, her eyes avoiding his gaze. "Emma Brooks." She couldn't bring herself to say more. He still looked at her with a hint of confusion, but something in his eyes seemed to soften. "Emma Brooks," he repeated slowly, as if testing the name on his tongue. A long moment passed before he spoke again. "I'm sorry. I think I owe you more than just a thank you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected an apology. In fact, she hadn't expected him to remember anything about her at all. But here he was, apologizing for the first time. The same man who had discarded her without explanation years ago was now showing signs of vulnerability, a side of him she never thought she'd see. She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't owe me anything." But deep inside, she felt a pang of emotion that she couldn't quite place. Was it relief? Bitterness? She didn't know. She had spent years building walls around herself, walls that he had never seen through. But now, in this small hospital room, everything felt different. He was no longer the powerful CEO that had torn her world apart. He was a man who had been brought to his knees, relying on her for survival. It was hard to reconcile the two images. Liam looked at her for a long time, his eyes searching hers, as if he were trying to read her thoughts. Finally, he spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "I remember you," he said softly. "From the company, right? You were one of the assistants?" Emma's stomach churned at the mention of her old job. That was the understatement of the century. She had been an assistant, yes, but more than that, she had been a young woman trying to make her way in a world that had no place for her. "I was fired," she said, her voice tinged with a bitterness she couldn't quite hide. "But I don't expect you to remember that." Liam's expression shifted, the guilt creeping back into his eyes. "I do remember," he said, almost as if speaking to himself. "I didn't handle things well. I know that now." Emma felt a wave of emotions wash over her. It was happening. He was acknowledging his mistake. But did it matter now? She had moved on. Or at least, She thought she had. The room fell silent again, and Emma could feel the weight of his gaze, but she refused to meet it. "I've made a lot of mistakes," Liam said quietly. "And I've hurt a lot of people along the way. You were one of them." She could hear the sincerity in his voice, but she wasn't sure she was ready to forgive him, not yet. Not after everything. Emma glanced at the door, the desire to leave overwhelming her. She couldn't stay here, not now, not like this. She had too many questions, too many things to sort out. But before she could make her move, Liam spoke again, this time with a quiet determination. "I owe you more than just a thank you," he said, his voice firm, "and I'm going to make it right, whatever it takes." Emma froze. She wasn't sure what he meant by that, but she could feel her pulse quicken. Would he offer her something? A job? A chance to settle old scores? She wasn't sure she wanted to know. "You don't need to do anything," she replied quickly, trying to keep the distance between them. "You've done enough already." But Liam didn't back down. He was determined. And as he looked at her, she couldn't help but wonder what his next move would be. Emma stood still, her heart racing, as she looked at Liam, the man she had tried so hard to forget. His words hung in the air, filling the space between them, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was more than just a coincidence. He was serious, but could she trust him? Could she trust the same man who had once fired her without a second thought? The silence in the room stretched on, only interrupted by the faint beeping of the heart monitor beside his bed. Emma shifted her weight, feeling the tension build inside her. "You don't need to make things right," she finally said, her voice quieter than she intended. "You've already helped me by not firing me again." Liam's face tightened, as if her words had hit a nerve. "I know it's not enough," he said, his voice steady but filled with remorse. "But I can't undo what I did back then. I can only try to make it right now." Emma felt a strange mixture of frustration and sympathy bubbling inside her. She had been through so much, and she didn't know if she was ready to forgive him, even if he was genuinely trying to make amends. He had hurt her, and those scars ran deep. She shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "What do you expect me to do?" she asked, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I don't know if I can just move on from what happened." Liam didn't look away. Instead, his eyes seemed to soften as he looked at her, as if he understood the weight of her words. "I'm not asking you to forget," he said gently. "I'm asking you to give me a chance to show you that I'm not the person I was before. I want to make things right. I've been thinking about this for a long time." Emma took a deep breath. She wasn't sure what to make of his sudden change of heart. Was it guilt? Was it because he had seen her in action today, saving his life? She couldn't tell. But she also couldn't ignore the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet determination in his voice. Still, she wasn't ready to let her guard down completely. "I don't know," she replied, her voice wavering slightly. "I've spent so long building a life without you in it. I don't want to open old wounds." Liam nodded slowly, as if he had expected her response. "I understand," he said, his tone soft. "But if you're willing to give me a chance, I promise I'll do whatever it takes to prove myself." Emma felt a pang in her chest, the remnants of the old hurt resurfacing. She had worked so hard to get to where she was now, and the thought of letting Liam back into her life felt like a betrayal to herself. But part of her, just a small part, wondered what might happen if she gave him a chance. Maybe he had changed. Maybe he hadn't. She wasn't sure she was ready to find out. "Why did you even call me?" Emma asked, her voice a little sharper now. "Why not just let me go?" Liam seemed to hesitate for a moment, his eyes darkening slightly, as if the question had caught him off guard. "Because I saw something in you today," he said, his voice quieter than before. "You saved my life, and it made me realize that I've been selfish, that I've been running from my mistakes. I've spent so much time focusing on my business, on my career, that I've forgotten what really matters: people, relationships, connection. And now, I'm trying to fix that." Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. His words hit closer to home than she cared to admit. She had been so focused on her own survival, on keeping herself afloat, that she had shut out the possibility of real connection, of letting anyone in. She had made herself invisible in the hopes that no one would notice her, no one would see the cracks in her life. And now, here was Liam, the man who had once broken her, standing before her with a vulnerability she never thought he would show. He was asking for something she didn't know if she could give. "I need time," Emma said softly, her voice trembling just slightly. "I can't make any promises right now." Liam's expression softened, and for a moment it seemed like he understood. "I'm not asking for anything right away," he said gently. "I just want a chance. I want to show you that I'm not the same man who fired you, who let you go without a second thought." Emma nodded slowly, her heart still heavy with doubt. But she couldn't deny the small part of her that wanted to believe him. "We'll see," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. As she turned to leave the room, she felt a strange sense of relief mixed with uncertainty. Could she really let herself open up to him again? Could she trust him? Only time would tell. For now, all she could do was take one step at a time and see where this unexpected reunion would lead. Days passed after Emma's brief encounter with Liam, and she couldn't shake the thoughts of him, the apology, and the possibility of him changing. Her heart was torn between anger and a deep curiosity about the man he had become. She went through her daily routine at the clinic, but the memory of his eyes soft, full of regret, haunted her. Liam had asked for time, and so had she, but time seemed to stretch longer with every passing moment, with every thought of him. She couldn't understand why this was so difficult. Why was it so hard to move on from the past? Maybe it was because he had been a figure of authority, someone who had held power over her life, and now he was nothing more than a man trying to make up for his mistakes. Or maybe it was the way he had looked at her, vulnerable and sincere, a side of him she had never thought possible. She had seen him as nothing more than a cold CEO, a man who treated his employees like tools, but now there was a shift, and that shift made her question everything. One afternoon, as Emma was finishing her shift at the clinic, she received a call. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Emma," a familiar voice said, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Liam. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to apologize again, and I also wanted to make an offer." Emma felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "An offer?" she repeated, her voice shaky. "Yes," Liam said, his voice calm. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how you need time. I understand that, and I respect it, but I also wanted to make it right. So I'm offering you a chance to come work for me, for my company. Not as an assistant, but in a role that truly values your skills, your talent. You deserve more than what you were given before." Emma was stunned. She had expected many things from him, but this? This was a surprise. Was this some sort of attempt to make up for the past? Or was it genuine? She didn't know, but the idea of working for him again, this time on her own terms, was both exciting and terrifying. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why offer me this now?" Liam was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his tone was softer than before. "Because you saved my life, Emma. And that's more than just a physical thing. It's a wake-up call. I've realized that people like you, people with compassion, with heart, are the ones who truly make a difference. I wasn't paying attention before, but I am now, and I want you to be a part of that change." Emma's heart raced. This wasn't just a business proposal, it felt like something more. He wasn't asking her to come back to the company for him. He was asking her to join him in a new journey, a journey of redemption. But could she really work for the man who had hurt her so deeply? Could she look past the past and see this new Liam for who he was now? "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "It's a big step." Liam's voice was patient, understanding. "I get it, and I'm not rushing you. Take all the time you need, but please, just think about it. You have so much to offer, and I believe you can do great things." Emma remained silent for a moment, the weight of his words pressing down on her. This was the same man who had fired her years ago, but now he was offering her a chance to build something new, a chance to prove herself, to finally show the world and herself that she was more than just a woman who had been cast aside. Was this the opportunity she had been waiting for, or was it just another false promise? She didn't know, but she had to find out. "I'll think about it," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for the offer." "Take your time," Liam said gently. "I'll be here when you're ready." After hanging up, Emma stood there for a moment, the phone still pressed to her ear. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had a choice. A choice to move forward, to leave the past behind, or to stay stuck in the hurt and bitterness. She didn't know which path to take, but one thing was certain. She couldn't keep running from the truth. She had to face it. She had to face him. And maybe, just maybe, she could finally forgive him and herself for the past. It had been a few days since Emma received Liam's offer, and she couldn't stop thinking about it. The decision weighed heavily on her, and with every passing minute, she found herself second-guessing. Could she really go back to work for him? Could she accept the offer of a fresh start with the man who had once dismissed her without a second thought? The thought of working for Liam again, this time on her own terms, felt like a dream and a nightmare all at once. She had worked so hard to get to where she was, to move beyond the pain and the humiliation of being fired. But now, Liam was offering her something she never expected: a chance to prove herself, to build her career, and to work alongside him. It felt like a path to redemption, but it also felt risky, like opening old wounds. Emma sat in her small apartment, the evening light casting shadows across the room, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. She could still hear Liam's voice in her head, gentle and persuasive. "You have so much to offer, Emma. I believe you can do great things." His words echoed in her mind, and a part of her wanted to believe him. But another part of her, the part that had been hurt, the part that had learned to protect herself, was scared. Scared of getting hurt again, scared of trusting him again. Could she really move past the bitterness of the past? Could she trust that he was offering this opportunity out of genuine remorse? Or was it just another way to ease his own guilt? Emma didn't know, and that uncertainty was eating at her. As the days passed, she found herself trying to make sense of it all. Her phone vibrated on the table, breaking her train of thought. She picked it up, seeing a message from Jenny, her best friend. "Have you decided yet?" Emma hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. She had told Jenny about Liam's offer, and Jenny had been supportive but cautious. "Just be careful," Jenny had said. "He hurt you once, Emma. Don't let him do it again." Emma sighed, putting the phone down. She had heard Jenny's warning, but the pull of this new opportunity was hard to ignore. And deep down, part of her wanted to believe in the possibility of something better. Liam had changed, or so he claimed. But was it enough? Was he really the man who could give her the future she deserved? Or was he just offering empty promises? She wasn't sure. But the only way to find out was to take a chance. That evening, after a long day at work, Emma found herself standing outside Liam's office building, staring up at the towering structure. The city lights reflected off the glass, casting a glow on the street below. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The receptionist greeted her with a smile. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Parker is expecting you." Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest as she made her way to the elevator. The ride to the top floor felt endless, each floor passing by slowly, almost like a countdown to the decision she was about to make. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into the sleek, modern office. Liam was standing by the window, his back to her, looking out at the city. He turned as he heard the door open, his expression softening when he saw her. "Emma," he said, his voice low but warm. "I'm glad you came." She nodded but didn't say anything at first. She wasn't sure what to say. Her emotions were all over the place, and she needed a moment to gather her thoughts. Liam gestured toward the seat in front of his desk, and Emma sat down. There was a brief moment of silence before Liam spoke again. "I know this is a big decision for you," he said, his voice sincere. "And I know I don't have the right to ask you to trust me. But I want you to know that I'm committed to making this right, whatever it takes." Emma met his gaze, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future pressing down on her. This was the moment that would shape the rest of her life. "I've thought a lot about what you said," she began, her voice steady but quiet. "And I've decided. I'm willing to give this a chance. I'm willing to work with you." Liam's eyes lit up, and a small, relieved smile appeared on his face. "You won't regret it," he said softly. Emma looked at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her believe him, just for a moment. Maybe he had changed. Maybe this was the start of something new, something better. Or maybe it was just another step toward the unknown. Either way, she had made her decision. She had chosen to take a chance. She had chosen to trust again. And for the first time in a long while, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. The past didn't have to define her. She was ready for the future, whatever it might hold. Emma's first day back at the office was a whirlwind of emotions, a mixture of anticipation and nerves that she could barely contain. As she stepped into the sleek, modern lobby of Liam's company, she felt the weight of the decision she had made the night before pressing on her chest. The building itself seemed to mirror her inner conflict, polished, professional but cold. She walked past the glass walls and polished floors, feeling like an outsider, as if everyone could sense the vulnerability that came with her return. She had always known that the world of business was cutthroat, but now she was stepping into it with eyes wide open, not just as an employee, but as someone who had to prove herself. As she reached the elevator, she hesitated for a moment. The doors slid open, and she stepped inside, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Her reflection in the shiny metal walls made her pause again. She didn't look like the same woman who had been fired all those years ago, broken and humiliated. No, this time, she was different. She was stronger. The elevator dinged as it reached the top floor, and she stepped out into the open, expansive space of the office. Liam was waiting for her, his posture relaxed yet confident, as though he had been expecting her arrival all along. His warm smile greeted her. But there was something different about him now, something genuine, something that made her believe that he was, perhaps, a different man than the one who had cast her aside. "Emma, I'm glad you're here," he said, his voice warm but still professional. "We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm confident you're going to do great things here." She forced a smile, feeling the nerves bubble up inside her. "Thank you for the opportunity," she replied, her voice steady, despite the uncertainty that lingered in her chest. Liam led her to her desk, a sleek, modern workstation in the heart of the office. As she settled in, she glanced around at the team, most of whom were busy typing away on their computers or discussing projects in small groups. They seemed focused, driven, a stark contrast to her own inner turmoil. She had always been a hard worker, but now she had to prove herself to everyone, including Liam, the very man who had once dismissed her. As the day went on, Emma found herself immersed in meetings and tasks, each more challenging than the last. She was overwhelmed at first, trying to get her bearings in a fast-paced environment that she hadn't experienced in years. But as the hours passed, she began to find her rhythm. There was something empowering about being here, in this space where her contributions mattered, where her skills were being recognized. It was a feeling she hadn't had in a long time, and she realized just how much she had missed it. By lunchtime, she had already started making connections with some of her new colleagues. They were friendly and welcoming, and she could tell they respected her professionalism. But it was Liam who kept catching her eye, who seemed to notice her efforts more than anyone else. Every time their eyes met, there was a flicker of something unspoken between them, an acknowledgement of the past, but also of the present, of the new start they were both trying to make. As the day came to a close, Emma sat at her desk, typing up the last of her reports. She felt a sense of accomplishment, a feeling she hadn't had in so long. For the first time in a while, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, and yet, she couldn't shake the thought that she was still walking on thin ice. It wasn't just about proving herself to her colleagues. It was about proving herself to herself. Could she really forgive Liam? Could she truly leave the past behind and move forward with him? She didn't know, but she was willing to try. Just as she was about to leave for the day, Liam walked up to her desk. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his tone softer than usual, as if he could sense the weight of her thoughts. Emma looked up at him, meeting his gaze. "I'm feeling good," she said, her voice steady. "I think I'm starting to find my place here." Liam nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "I knew you would. You've always had the talent, Emma. You just needed the chance." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, and for a moment she wondered if he truly meant it, if he really had changed. "Thank you," she replied, her voice quiet but filled with gratitude. As she stood to leave, Liam followed her to the door, his eyes lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. "I'm glad you're here," he said again, his voice almost like a promise. Emma smiled faintly, not sure what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, and there were still many questions left unanswered. But for now, she had taken the first step. She had chosen to move forward, and in doing so, she had taken control of her own story. The following weeks flew by in a blur for Emma. She found herself adapting to her new role faster than she had anticipated, her confidence growing with each passing day. She threw herself into her work, determined to prove that she was more than just a person from the past who had once been fired. Every task she tackled felt like a small victory, and slowly, she started earning the respect of her colleagues. However, it wasn't just her work that was changing. It was the way she was beginning to see Liam. Every time their paths crossed, she noticed the quiet care in his eyes, the way he always made time to check in on her, not as her boss, but as someone who genuinely cared. It was hard for her to ignore, hard to dismiss the possibility that the man who had hurt her could actually be trying to make amends. Emma still kept a small distance, though. She hadn't forgotten what had happened between them, and she wasn't about to let him back into her heart just because he seemed different. But she couldn't deny the changes in him. There was something real about the way he interacted with her now, something that made her wonder if the man she had once known, the cold, distant CEO, was really gone. One afternoon, as the office started to wind down, Liam approached Emma's desk. He seemed hesitant, as if he were unsure of how to approach her. She looked up from her screen, raising an eyebrow at him. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. Liam hesitated for a moment, then sat down across from her, his expression serious but kind. "I wanted to talk to you about something," he said quietly. "I know I've been pushing you to take on more responsibilities, but I wanted to make sure you're not feeling overwhelmed. I don't want to push you too hard." Emma felt a knot tighten in her chest. This wasn't the cold, calculating Liam she had known before. This was a man who genuinely cared about her well-being, and it made her heart ache in a way she hadn't expected. "I'm doing fine," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm just getting used to everything, but I appreciate you checking in." He smiled, a soft, genuine smile that made her heart flutter. "Good," he said. "I'm glad to hear that. I've noticed how hard you've been working, and I just wanted to say thank you. You're doing great, Emma. I don't want you to feel like you have to do everything at once, though. Take your time." The kindness in his words was enough to leave her speechless. She had always seen Liam as the type of man who demanded perfection from everyone around him, but now he was offering her something she had never expected: patience. She nodded slowly, her chest tight with emotion. "Thank you, Liam. That means a lot to me." They shared a long look, a silent understanding passing between them. She could see that he truly meant what he said, and for the first time, Emma felt like he was no longer just the man who had fired her. He was someone she could actually trust. The next few days were filled with a newfound ease between them. Liam continued to give her space, allowing her to grow into her role at her own pace, but he also made it clear that he was always there if she needed support. It was the balance she had longed for: a relationship based on mutual respect, not power dynamics. Emma's confidence grew even more as she felt Liam's trust in her. But even as everything seemed to be going well, a part of her couldn't help but feel uncertain. Could she truly forgive him? Could she ever let go of the past? One night, after a particularly long day at work, Emma found herself alone in the office, staying late to finish a report. The soft hum of the fluorescent lights was the only sound in the otherwise quiet space. Just as she was about to leave, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Liam's voice broke the silence, soft and almost hesitant. "Emma," he said, "can we talk for a minute?" She turned around, her heart skipping a beat. He was standing in the doorway of her office, looking at her with that same serious, almost vulnerable expression. "Of course," she replied, standing up. "What's on your mind?" He took a deep breath before speaking, as if gathering his thoughts. "I know we've been moving forward, and I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work, whatever it takes. But I also need to ask you something." Emma frowned slightly, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "What is it?" she asked. "Do you ever think about the past, about what happened between us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's heart clenched at the question. She had tried so hard to move past it, to ignore the hurt. But it was still there, lingering in the background. "I think about it," she admitted softly, "but I'm not sure I can ever fully forgive you." Liam nodded, his expression somber. "I understand, and I don't expect you to. But I need you to know that I'm not the same man I was before. I want to make it right. I don't know how to undo what I did, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm not that person anymore." Emma looked at him, her heart torn in two. She wanted to believe him, she really did. But the wounds of the past ran deep. "I'm trying, Liam," she whispered. "But it's hard. I don't know if I can ever forget what you did." Liam stepped closer, his eyes filled with regret and sincerity. "I don't expect you to forget," he said softly. "But I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to forgive me." Emma didn't say anything, but she knew, deep down, that she wasn't ready to forgive him yet. It was going to take time to heal, time to trust again. The days after that conversation were filled with tension and introspection for Emma. She couldn't deny the changes in Liam, and part of her wondered if he was truly different now, or if it was just the guilt of the past speaking. Every time they crossed paths at the office, she saw the sincerity in his eyes. But she also couldn't ignore the scar that still lingered in her heart. She wanted to forgive him, she really did. But the wound was deep, and forgiveness felt like something she wasn't ready for. As the weeks went on, the distance between them started to grow, though not in the way Emma had expected. Liam continued to be supportive, giving her space to grow in her role, while also offering gentle encouragement when needed. He didn't push her for answers, didn't rush her, and it was this patience that made Emma's heart ache even more. She had always known that forgiveness wasn't easy, but it seemed impossible with the weight of the past hanging over her. One evening, as Emma stayed late in the office, she found herself lost in her thoughts. The soft glow of her desk lamp illuminated the documents spread out in front of her, but her mind was far from her work. She was thinking about Liam again, about the decision she still hadn't made. Could she forgive him? Was she ready to take that step? The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts, and when she looked up, she saw Liam standing at the doorway of her office. He looked tired, but there was a softness in his gaze, a gentleness that she hadn't seen before. He had come to check on her again, just like he had been doing for the past few weeks. "Hey," he said, his voice quiet. "You're still here?" Emma smiled faintly, her heart pounding at the sight of him. "Yeah, just finishing up some things," she replied. "It's been a long day." Liam nodded and took a step closer, his expression thoughtful. "I wanted to talk to you," he said, his voice softer now, almost like he was searching for the right words. "About everything that's happened between us." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She knew where this was headed, but she didn't know if she was ready for it. She had heard his apologies, felt his regret, but she still didn't know if she could open up the door to forgiveness. "Liam," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I've been thinking about what you said. I've been thinking about forgiveness." He didn't say anything at first, just watched her with a quiet intensity. She could see the vulnerability in his eyes, and it made her heart ache even more. "I'm not there yet," Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever get there, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to let go of the past, to move forward." Liam took a deep breath, his face softening. "I understand," he said quietly, "and I don't want you to rush. I just want you to know that I'm here, for however long it takes." Emma looked at him for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had never thought she would hear him say that, not after everything that had happened between them. It was the kind of support she hadn't expected, but it was exactly what she needed. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means more to me than you know." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward, but filled with a quiet understanding. Emma could feel the weight of their shared history, the complexity of their emotions, but she also felt something else, a quiet sense of hope. Maybe forgiveness wasn't as far off as she had thought. Maybe it wasn't something she had to rush into, but something that would come in time. Slowly, Liam stepped closer, his hand resting gently on the back of her chair. "You don't have to forgive me today, Emma," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But when you're ready, I'll be here. I'll always be here." Emma felt a lump form in her throat, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel as burdened by the past. There was still a long way to go, but maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new, something healing. She nodded slowly, her heart swelling with emotions she couldn't quite express. "I believe you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I just need time." Liam smiled softly, his eyes filled with relief, and something more, something hopeful. "Take all the time you need," he said, his voice gentle. "I'm not going anywhere." Emma finally allowed herself to exhale, the weight of the past beginning to lift, if only just a little. She knew there was a long road ahead, but for the first time, she felt like she wasn't walking it alone. As they stood there, the quiet between them felt comfortable, and Emma realized that, for the first time in years, she was ready to move forward. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer had to define her. With Liam's quiet support, she could begin to rebuild, to trust again, and maybe, just maybe, she could forgive. Time would tell. But for now, she had taken the first step. Months passed since Emma had first returned to work with Liam, and in that time, her life had transformed in ways she never thought possible. She had taken a chance on him, on their future, and it wasn't always easy. There were moments when the past threatened to resurface, when the memories of her firing would haunt her in the quiet of the night. But through it all, Liam's quiet support never wavered. He had been patient, giving her the space she needed, but also showing up for her in ways that made her believe in the possibility of forgiveness. Slowly, Emma had learned to trust again, to let go of the hurt, and to embrace the new beginning they had both worked so hard to create. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was all that mattered. One sunny afternoon, after weeks of deliberation, Emma found herself standing in front of Liam's office door, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been feeling different lately, as if the weight she had carried for so long was finally beginning to lift. The decision she had been avoiding was now staring her in the face. She had finally come to terms with her feelings, and it was time to take the next step. She knocked lightly before entering, her gaze meeting Liam's from across the room. He looked up from his desk, offering her that familiar smile, the one that had once seemed so distant but now felt like a promise. "Emma, what's on your mind?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity, but also warmth. She hesitated for a moment, but then she walked forward, feeling the determination in her step. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "about us, about everything, and I've realized something." Liam raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "What's that?" he asked. She took a deep breath, her heart racing but her mind clear. "I'm ready," she said quietly, but with absolute certainty. "I'm ready to forgive you, Liam. I'm ready to move forward, not just for work, but for us. I can't change the past, but I can choose to let it go." Liam's expression softened, and for a brief moment, he seemed almost lost for words. The weight of her words hung in the air, and Emma could feel the shift between them, the quiet understanding that things were changing for the better. He stood up, his gaze never leaving hers, and took a step closer. "You don't know how much that means to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've spent so long trying to make things right, but I know I can't undo what I did. All I can do is promise to keep being the person you need me to be." Emma felt a wave of emotion rise within her. There were still moments when she felt unsure, when the scars of the past threatened to resurface. But this moment right here, with Liam standing before her, offering her his heart, made everything feel worth it. "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "And I'm willing to take that chance. I believe in us, in this new beginning." They stood there for a moment, silently taking in the weight of the decision, of the journey they had both been on. The past had been filled with pain, but it had also brought them to this point, this place of understanding and growth. And now, standing together, they had the chance to build something new, something real. Liam smiled, the warmth in his eyes reflecting the relief that had filled his chest. "Thank you, Emma," he said softly. "You've given me a second chance, and I'll never take that for granted." She smiled back, her heart swelling with something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. "We've both earned it," she replied, "and we'll figure it out together." As they stood there, in the quiet of his office, Emma realized that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but together they could face whatever came their way. She had forgiven him, and in doing so, she had forgiven herself. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt at peace. The past was behind them, and the future was theirs to create. The journey ahead would be theirs to navigate. But with Liam by her side, she knew they could face anything. And as they walked out of his office together, ready to embrace the new opportunities that awaited them, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. This was the life she had always wanted, a life where trust, growth, and love could flourish. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt full of promise.